Sometimes the wild surprises even the most experienced scientists. Imagine a massive lion, the apex predator of the savannah, standing over two tiny, trembling wild dog pups. And instead of attacking, it protects them. What happens next will challenge everything you think you know about nature. If you love witnessing the incredible surprises of the animal kingdom, hit that like button and subscribe to follow our journey through the wonders of wildlife. Comment below if you've ever seen an act of kindness in nature. It might just change how we see the world forever. The African sun was already beginning its slow descent toward the horizon, painting the Chobe National Park in hues of amber, gold, and deep burnt orange. Dr. Marcus Jennings adjusted his binoculars for what he assumed would be another routine afternoon of monitoring the Savannah pride. Years of experience had taught him that the savannah could be deceptive. Beauty often masked danger. Today, however, the scene unfolding in the distance would defy everything he thought he knew about predator behavior. Thabo, Marcus's research assistant and lifelong student of the park's ecosystem, whispered urgently from behind him. "Look there, by the acacia thicket," he said, pointing to a shadowed patch of tall grass northeast of their observation point. Marcus refocused his binoculars, expecting to see one of the pride's lionesses returning from a hunt. Instead, he froze. Two tiny forms trembled near the edge of the grass, their coats a patchwork of brown, black, and white, clearly wild dog pups, no more than 8 weeks old. The sight was immediately alarming. African wild dogs were notoriously social. Their survival depended on tight-knit packs with highly coordinated hunting and rearing structures. Seeing two pups entirely alone suggested disaster. Marcus scanned the surrounding savannah in disbelief. "Where's their pack?" he murmured under his breath. There was no sign of adult wild dogs, no frantic movement, nothing. In this region, isolated pups were almost always doomed without the protection and care of their family. Before either researcher could react further, a new figure appeared from the shadow of a massive baobab tree. KBO, the dominant male of the Savannah pride, emerged. At approximately 450 pounds, with a thick, dark mane framing his formidable face, he embodied the apex of predatory power. The setting sun backlit his massive silhouette, lending a near-mythical quality to his movements as he approached the two vulnerable pups. Thabo's voice barely rose above a whisper. "They're dead." Marcus and Thabo exchanged a grim glance, fully aware of the brutal reality of predator-prey dynamics in the African savannah. Lions routinely eliminated the offspring of competing predators, ensuring future dominance over shared territory. These two helpless pups should have been nothing more than prey. Yet what happened next shattered every assumption Marcus had ever held about instinct and survival. The slightly larger of the two pups took a tentative step forward toward the approaching lion. Then another. Its sibling followed, hesitant but determined. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest. He held the binoculars tighter, unable to look away. The pups' tiny mouths moved rapidly, producing high-pitched whines that carried across the grass in patterns Marcus instinctively recognized. They were communicating, but not with each other. They were addressing KBO. The lion paused mid-stride, his tail flicking with curiosity rather than the rigid horizontal posture signaling imminent attack. For long, tense moments, predator and potential prey regarded each other in the golden glow of sunset. "They're asking for help," Thabo whispered. "Look at them. It's not just fear. They're submitting, but deliberately. They're reaching out." Marcus initially resisted the thought. Scientific rigor demanded that he dismiss any suggestion of anthropomorphism, attributing human emotions or motives to animal behavior. But the deliberate actions before him defied simple explanation. KBO lowered his massive head, sniffing and assessing the trembling pups. They flattened themselves against the ground, ears pinned back, tails tucked tightly, yet they did not flee. Marcus reached slowly into his pack for the camera equipment, careful not to break eye contact. Every instinct screamed at him that he was witnessing a historic, unprecedented event. Nothing in scientific literature documented such interspecies interaction, especially between apex predators and direct competitors. Through the telephoto lens, Marcus captured KBO as he circled the pups, sniffing and inspecting them carefully. Then, astonishingly, he settled on the ground nearby, not as a threat, but as a guardian presence. Thabo's voice broke the stunned silence. "He's guarding them, or maybe he's not hungry." Either way, he's not attacking. The pup's tiny bodies relaxed slightly, curling together in a tight ball. The exhaustion of fear seemed to overcome their initial terror. Slowly, sleep claimed them while KBO maintained vigilant posture, scanning the horizon for any signs of danger. The researchers remained in their observation blind, cameras running, hearts pounding. Marcus's mind raced, trying to reconcile this behavior with every theory of predator instincts, adaptive evolution, and interspecies aggression he had studied for decades. Night descended quickly over the savannah, bringing with it the chill that often caught inexperienced observers off guard. Marcus and Thabo huddled in thermal layers, taking turns monitoring the scene through night vision equipment. The lion maintained a careful perimeter around the sleeping pups, occasionally rising to scent the air, ensuring that no other predator, hyena, jackal, or rogue lion could approach. Marcus whispered to himself, more as a thought than speech, "This is beyond anything documented. He's protecting them, not for hunting, not for curiosity, but for their survival." Thabo shook his head slowly. "My grandmother used to tell stories about the old lions. Lions who remembered when the land had different rules, before humans drew boundaries between animals. Today I see her stories in action." Marcus suppressed a chuckle, though it was tinged with awe. No rational explanation could fully capture the intensity of what they were witnessing. KBO's behavior challenged the very foundations of competitive exclusion theory. The idea that species occupying the same ecological niche inevitably compete, often violently, for survival. Yet here, a predator seemed to act entirely against instinct, prioritizing care over competition. Throughout the night, Marcus documented KBO's constant vigilance. He recorded moments when the lion gently adjusted his position to block wind or cold. Subtle gestures of protection toward creatures that, under normal circumstances, would have been eliminated. Marcus's fingers shook occasionally on the camera triggers, not from cold, but from the overwhelming gravity of what he was recording. As the first hints of dawn streaked across the horizon, painting the savannah in soft pinks and pale golds, Marcus realized that this night would redefine the boundaries of scientific understanding. These two tiny wild dog pups, vulnerable and dependent, had survived under the protection of an apex predator. KBO's choices had subverted centuries of evolutionary expectation, and Marcus knew that what he had captured on camera could become one of the most remarkable wildlife studies in history. Yet even as awe filled the researchers' minds, a question persisted, gnawing at Marcus's logical core. Why? Why would a lion whose survival strategy relied on dominance and elimination of competitors protect the very species that posed a future threat to his pride? No immediate answer emerged, only the growing certainty that something profoundly extraordinary had occurred in this remote corner of Botswana. Marcus and Thabo exchanged a glance, the weight of their discovery settling like the night air around them. For the first time in decades of research, they felt that the natural world was speaking directly to them, not through fear or danger, but through an act of compassion so profound it challenged every preconceived notion they had about life, survival, and the fragile interconnected web of existence on the savannah. The first part of this incredible story ended not with a roar or a hunt, but with quiet vigilance, trembling pups, and a lion whose choices defied nature itself. The stage was set for what would become one of the most extraordinary observations in wildlife history, a tale that would force humanity to reconsider the boundaries of empathy, instinct, and the unseen connections that bind all living creatures. The savannah night stretched on, thick with the sound of insects, rustling grass, and distant calls of nocturnal predators. Stars sparkled overhead, seemingly indifferent to the drama unfolding beneath them. Marcus Jennings and Thabo Enelvu, still confined to their observation blind, could hear their own anxious breaths, punctuated only by the quiet clicks of Marcus's camera equipment. Outside, KBO, the dominant male lion, remained a silent sentinel beside the two tiny wild dog pups. It was impossible not to marvel at the sheer contradiction in behavior. The two species were natural competitors. Lions routinely hunted wild dogs to reduce future competition for prey. Yet here, KBO lay near the pups, his massive frame a barrier against potential threats, rather than a weapon aimed at destruction. Marcus's mind spun through evolutionary theories and behavioral studies. He had spent more than 2 decades studying predator-prey relationships, yet nothing he had learned prepared him for this. The pups, sensing the lion's watchfulness, gradually relaxed their tremors. They huddled together, tiny bodies pressed against one another, their sides rising and falling with shallow breaths. Though exhaustion had momentarily claimed them, Marcus could see the subtle twitching of ears and flicking of tails, signaling alertness to KBO's every movement. The lion's tail occasionally flicked in response to distant noises, his head swiveling with acute awareness. Even in apparent stillness, he was engaged, evaluating the environment with the precision of a master strategist. Thabo whispered, his voice tinged with awe. He's thinking like a protector, not a hunter. Do you see how he positions himself? He isn't just lying there. He's choosing a location that would keep predators away. Marcus adjusted his night vision scope, observing KBO circling the pups once more. The lion's eyes glowed faintly green in the darkness as he sniffed the air, his ears twitching at every distant sound. Each movement was deliberate, cautious, and careful. Precisely the behavior one would expect from a parent guarding its offspring, yet these were not his young. Marcus tried to dismiss the anthropomorphic thought, but the scene refused to fit within conventional scientific explanations. Outside the circle of KBO's watch, the African night continued its relentless rhythm. Hyenas laughed in the distance, jackals padded through the underbrush, and the occasional roar of another pride echoed faintly. Normally, such nocturnal activity would have spelled imminent danger for 2 unprotected pups. Yet KBO's presence acted as a force field, discouraging even the most daring scavengers from venturing too close. His dominance was unmistakable. Every predator understood instinctively that the lion's authority over this small territory was absolute. Hours passed. The pups shifted occasionally, curling tighter against the lion when a sudden breeze rustled the grass, or stretching small legs in minor stretches. KBO rose a few times, each movement deliberate, walking in short, precise circles around the pups. He would pause to scent the air, then return to his vigil. Marcus captured each moment meticulously, knowing that this documentation might be the most significant of his career. He recorded the lion's behavior, the pups' reactions, and the interplay of predator-prey tension that was, for once, suspended. Thabo leaned closer, whispering softly, "This reminds me of the old stories from my village, about lions that understood the land in ways humans can't always explain. They speak of the old lions protecting even those that shouldn't be protected." Marcus exhaled slowly. The skepticism of a scientist warred with the wonder of what they were observing. KBO's behavior could not be explained by hunger, territorial instinct, or reproductive drive. The lion was choosing to maintain vigilance over creatures that, under natural law, were supposed to be eliminated. For Marcus, the scene challenged everything he had known about interspecies competition, about survival strategies, and about the rigid hierarchies of the predator world. By the early hours before dawn, the temperature had dropped significantly. The African night could be cruel, and Marcus knew that hypothermia, dehydration, or exhaustion could easily overwhelm the pups. KBO, seemingly aware of their vulnerability, shifted his massive body to block the chill wind. Every exhalation of the lion radiated warmth, creating a microclimate around the tiny wild dogs. Marcus watched, fascinated, as the smaller pup pressed close to the lion's flank, while the slightly larger sibling nestled against the first. It was a tableau of vulnerability and protection, unlike anything recorded in wildlife science. Occasionally, the lion would rise and patrol a short perimeter, returning to the same spot after making sure the immediate area was safe. Marcus and Thabo whispered calculations about distance and safety, noting that KBO's behavior actively reduced the risk of predation from hyenas, jackals, and even other lions. He was not passive, he was proactive, ensuring the survival of these 2 orphaned pups through sheer presence and strategic positioning. As night deepened, Marcus reflected on the ethical and scientific implications. Observing this interspecies altruism could yield revolutionary insights into animal behavior. If documented rigorously, this could challenge decades of understanding about competition and cooperation in apex predators. Yet at the same time, Marcus recognized the limitations of observation. These pups could not survive long without their pack. KBO's protection, extraordinary as it was, did not provide food, and survival in the wild depended not only on safety, but also on nourishment. Thabo, sensing Marcus's conflict, spoke softly. In my village, we have a word, Ubuntu. It means I am because we are. Today, I see it in the wild. This lion is showing Ubuntu. He's part of a system bigger than just himself. Marcus nodded, humbled. Science often reduced complex natural phenomena to measurable data, but this moment transcended statistics in observation. KBO's behavior suggested something deeper, an instinctual or neurological phenomenon that allowed for empathy, care, or a form of understanding across species. Whether it was learned behavior, misdirected paternal instinct, or a rare neurological anomaly, the result was the same. Two vulnerable wild dog pups were safe under the gaze of a creature designed by nature to be their predator. Hours blurred. The first hint of dawn began painting the horizon in shades of pink and pale gold. The lion remained vigilant, occasionally licking his massive paws or adjusting his posture, but never straying far from the pups. The animals in the distance gradually began their morning routines, but no predator dared approach. KBO's presence had altered the natural hierarchy in this small zone, creating a temporary truce in a world defined by competition and survival. Marcus whispered to Thabo, "We need to document everything. This is history in the making. No one will believe it without proof." The camera equipment continued recording as the first rays of sunlight touched the savannah. The pups began to stir, small yips escaping them, yet they did so under the lion's watchful eye, confident enough now to begin tentative exploration within his protective radius. Marcus and Thabo exchanged a glance of shared astonishment. KBO's choices were deliberate, consistent, and protective. This was not a momentary lapse in predatory instinct. This was a night-long display of cross-species protection. As the savannah awoke, Marcus realized the significance of what he had witnessed. The lion had transformed a scene that should have ended in death into one of survival. These wild dog pups, helpless without their pack, had endured the night not through luck, but through the conscious or instinctive actions of an apex predator. Science had rarely, if ever, recorded behavior so contradictory to expectation, and Marcus understood that the implications could ripple through wildlife biology, behavioral ecology, and even conservation strategies for endangered species. For the first time, Marcus allowed himself to feel the full weight of awe. The night had been long, the chills severe, and the tension unbearable, yet the outcome was remarkable. KBO had not merely tolerated the pups, he had actively safeguarded them, challenging centuries of assumed natural order. Marcus and Thabo remained silent, recording every moment, their minds racing with possibilities and theories. The morning light revealed not just the savannah, but the extraordinary bond that had formed in darkness, predator and potential prey, bound in a fragile yet undeniable alliance. It was a lesson in vigilance, protection, and perhaps the untapped capacity for empathy even in the wild. As the first light of dawn stretched across the Chobe National Park, the savannah began to stir. A gentle breeze carried the earthy scent of wet grass and distant water, and the chorus of early morning birds filled the air. Marcus Jennings and Thabo Enelvu remained in their observation blind, cameras ready, hearts racing with anticipation. The events of the night had already defied every expectation, but as the sun climbed, a new set of challenges and revelations was about to unfold. The smaller of the two wild dog pups began to stir, trembling visibly as it shivered in the pre-dawn chill. Marcus leaned closer to the camera, holding his breath. The pup's high-pitched whines cut through the morning quiet, a fragile call for warmth and reassurance. Before Thabo could speak, KBO rose from his vigil and moved deliberately toward the trembling pup. The sheer size and power of the lion could have terrified the young animal, yet instead the pup pressed closer to his flank. KBO lay down beside the pup, his enormous frame creating both a windbreak and a source of heat. The larger sibling, after a moment of hesitation, followed, curling against the lion as if instinctively understanding the protection offered. Marcus's fingers shook on the camera controls. He had witnessed lions interact with cubs of their own species countless times, but never had he imagined a male lion providing care to a member of a competing species. The morning sun climbed higher, casting golden light over the savannah, and with it came new practical challenges for survival. The pups were visibly dehydrated. Their small bodies had endured the chill of night without adult guidance, relying entirely on instinct and the unexpected protection of an apex predator. KBO, as though recognizing the immediate threat of dehydration, led them carefully across the grasslands toward a nearby waterhole. Marcus and Thabo followed at a safe distance, careful not to disturb the scene, but eager to document every step. KBO's movements were deliberate, pacing him at a stride to accommodate the pup's tiny legs. The pups occasionally stumbled, faltering in the dry grass, yet the lion adjusted accordingly. He slowed, sometimes circling to check that both pups were keeping pace, then resumed his steady, guiding path. Marcus could hardly believe what he was seeing, a male lion acting as guardian, mentor, and protector in a manner that transcended instinctual predation. As they approached the waterhole, the reaction of the savannah's other inhabitants would confirm the apex status of KBO. A small herd of impala, several zebras, and a family of warthogs immediately tensed, instinctively retreating to a safe distance. Even in the presence of water, thirst was temporarily overridden by the recognition of danger. Yet the lion showed no interest in hunting. Instead, he positioned himself strategically to allow the pups access to the water, maintaining vigilance while remaining non-threatening. The pups eagerly began drinking, their small tongues lapping at the cool surface. Marcus noted every detail, the timing, the pace, and the reassurance the lion provided through mere presence. The peace, however, was tenuous. From the eastern approach came the unmistakable silhouettes of hyenas, their hunched forms betraying intent. Opportunistic and cunning, hyenas were known to prey on vulnerable young, particularly wild dog pups. KBO's reaction was immediate. He rose to his full height, positioning his massive frame between the approaching predators and the now alert pups. A low, resonant growl emanated from deep within his chest, vibrating through the air and warning both hyenas and the nearby herbivores of his dominance. The standoff was tense. 3 hyenas, confident in their numbers, advanced cautiously, reassessing the risk-reward balance in real time. Yet KBO's posture, size, and unwavering focus communicated a clear message. The pups were under his protection, and any attempt to challenge him would be costly. After several long moments, the hyenas retreated, disappearing back into the scrub with wary glances. Marcus whispered almost to himself, "This is active protection, not passive tolerance. He's defending them as if they were his own." Once the immediate threat had passed, KBO resumed his role as guide and guardian. He led the pups away from the waterhole toward a shaded acacia grove, providing relief from the already rising heat of the morning sun. Marcus observed the pups' energy improving slightly after hydration, yet their coordination remained awkward, a reminder of their youth and the challenges of survival without their pack. Occasionally, a stumble would send one tumbling into the dry grass, but KBO would pause and look back, ensuring the pup had regained footing before continuing. Marcus's scientific mind raced. Normally, wild dog pups at this age would still rely entirely on regurgitated meat from returning pack members. Without such sustenance, survival chances were slim, even under the lion's protection. Yet KBO appeared undeterred by the nutritional needs he could not meet. His guardianship focused entirely on physical safety, warmth, and guidance. A partial solution, yet sufficient to give the pups a fighting chance until human intervention could arrive. Thabo, ever the storyteller, murmured, "Perhaps this is how old lions understood the balance of life. Protection without aid for ownership or consumption. He isn't keeping them, he's ensuring they survive." Marcus could not argue. There was something profound in the simplicity of the act, protection in the absence of expectation. It was instinctual, yet it transcended instinct, blending survival, awareness, and empathy. The morning continued with careful observation. Marcus documented every interaction, the lion's vigilance, the pup's tentative confidence, the subtle signs of fatigue, and the slow recovery of energy through hydration. Each moment reinforced the idea that KBO's behavior was deliberate. He adjusted his position to shield the pups from sunlight, block potential pathways of other predators, and allowed them access to critical resources while maintaining a watchful eye. Marcus scribbled notes furiously, aware that this could be unprecedented evidence of cross-species altruism. The natural rhythm of the savannah continued around them. Birds called overhead, a distant crocodile moved near a waterhole, and the wind carried the scent of distant fires. Yet within this small microcosm, KBO and the pups created an oasis of safety, a bubble of survival against odds that would normally spell certain death. Marcus felt a mix of scientific awe and ethical responsibility. The lion's actions were extraordinary, but without human intervention, the pup's long-term survival remained precarious. Hours passed, and the sun rose higher, intensifying the heat. Marcus and Thabo realized that despite the lion's protective measures, the pup's condition was deteriorating in subtle ways. Signs of dehydration, weakness, and hunger were evident. Thabo, speaking quietly, suggested contacting park authorities for intervention, emphasizing that their presence alone would not secure the pup's survival. Marcus agreed, but a part of him hesitated. The scientific value of observing such unprecedented interspecies behavior in the wild was immense. Yet the ethical imperative was clear. The pup's survival took precedence over data collection. KBO, undeterred by human presence, continued to guide the pups across the savannah. He adjusted pace, direction, and even positioning relative to the sun, seemingly aware of environmental stressors. Marcus watched in astonishment as the pups began responding to his guidance with growing confidence. They no longer stumbled as frequently, and their tails lifted slightly in a sign of cautious optimism. Marcus realized that within hours the lion had transformed the pups from frightened, vulnerable creatures into beings capable of following and responding to guidance. A remarkable survival adaptation facilitated entirely by a natural ally who should have been their predator. By late morning, the group approached another small water source, one that had escaped the worst effects of the recent drought. KBO stopped at the edge, allowing the pups to drink, carefully monitoring the surroundings for threats. Other wildlife observed from a distance, their behavior altered by the lion's presence. Yet none dared challenge the newfound order. Marcus captured every detail: the interplay of species, the flow of water, the subtleties of posture and eye contact. Each frame would serve as evidence of a phenomenon never before documented in the wild. As Marcus reflected on the morning, it became clear that KBO's actions were more than instinctual protection. They were a study in strategy, awareness, and potentially empathy. The lion's vigilance, patience, and guidance ensured survival against environmental, predatory, and physiological challenges. Marcus's understanding of apex predator behavior was being rewritten in real time, offering insight into the hidden complexity of interspecies interactions on the African savannah. By mid-morning, the situation had reached a critical point. The two wild dog pups, though safer than the night before, remained fragile. Hydrated but still deprived of nourishment, their tiny bodies showed early signs of malnutrition. Marcus and Thabo, who had been recording every detail of KBO's extraordinary guardianship, knew that without intervention, survival odds were slim. The protective measures of the lion, remarkable as they were, could not provide food. A necessity for the pup's continued development. Thabo pulled out the satellite phone and began contacting the Chobe National Park wildlife authorities. Within the hour, a team led by Dr. Nora Kimathi, the park's head veterinarian, arrived. She carried essential supplies, medical equipment, and prepared protocols for rescuing orphaned wild dogs. Her face was a mix of professional concern and astonishment as Marcus handed her the footage from the night. "How long has the lion been with them?" she asked, eyes wide, scanning the monitors. Marcus adjusted the playback. "Nearly 24 hours. He's shown no aggression, only protection. He kept them safe from hyenas and provided warmth throughout the night." Dr. Kamathi shook her head slowly. "In all my years of wildlife medicine, I've never seen anything like this. Lions typically eliminate wild dog pups. It's one of the leading mortality factors for the species. Yet here we see active guardianship." The team set up a safe perimeter, observing KBO's behavior while preparing for the necessary intervention. Tranquilization was unavoidable if they were to transport the pups safely to the rehabilitation center. Marcus felt a pang of conflict. The opportunity to continue observing this unprecedented interspecies relationship was enormous. potentially reshaping scientific understanding. Yet the ethical imperative was clear. The pup's survival had to take precedence over research. As preparations proceeded, KBO remained vigilant. He circled the pups, occasionally sniffing the air, scanning the horizon, and standing at full alert. Despite the presence of humans, he showed no aggression. His focus remained entirely on the pups, positioning himself between them and any potential threat, even from the park team. Marcus whispered to Thabo, even with humans here, he's prioritizing the pups over himself. That level of commitment is staggering. Suddenly, the distant sound of barking alerted everyone. A small wild dog pack appeared, emerging from the eastern grasslands. Approximately 5 adults moved with purpose, their eyes locked on the tiny figures near the lion. Marcus adjusted his binoculars. It's them. It has to be the surviving members of their pack. They've been searching for the missing pups. The scene transformed instantly. The pups perked up, ears forward, bodies tense with recognition. High-pitched whines and excited barks filled the air, bridging the distance between them and the approaching pack. KBO, for the first time, lifted his gaze toward the newcomers, as if evaluating the new dynamic. Marcus held his breath. The moment was precarious. The lion had shown dominance and protective behavior. Yet the arrival of the pups pack could challenge his decisions. The alpha female of the wild dog pack, identifiable by her distinctive white facial markings, stepped forward cautiously. Her body language combined caution and determination, balancing the recognition of threat with the desire to reclaim her offspring. KBO did not react aggressively. Instead, he shifted slightly, creating a clear path between the pups and the approaching adults. The alpha female advanced another few steps, stopping approximately 50 yards away. The pups could no longer contain themselves. With urgent whines and bursts of speed, they bolted toward the alpha female, their tiny legs carrying them as fast as possible across the open ground. Marcus's camera captured every desperate, joyous leap, the flurry of tails, ears, and paws as the pups reunited with the pack. Licking, whining, and physical contact confirmed recognition and survival. The remaining pack members approached more cautiously, forming a protective perimeter around the reunited pups. The wild dog's behavior was instinctual and coordinated. They evaluated KBO with vigilance, yet without hostility. For his part, the lion remained where he stood, neither advancing nor retreating. His posture communicated calm alertness, respect, and satisfaction. Marcus felt an overwhelming sense of awe. KBO had not interfered, had not reclaimed the pups, yet his protective actions had directly enabled this reunion. For several minutes, the reunion continued. Marcus and Thabo observed the alpha female leading the pups gently, ensuring their safety within the pack. Occasionally, she glanced back at KBO, a silent acknowledgement crossing the distance between predator and competitor. It was a brief but profound exchange, a recognition of intent, courage, and mutual understanding. The wild dog pack gradually moved away, taking the pups with them. KBO watched until they disappeared from sight, lowering himself to the ground in apparent exhaustion after a day-long vigil. Marcus exhaled deeply, the weight of what they had witnessed settling over him. The lion had demonstrated a behavior that defied centuries of understanding about predator-prey dynamics. Cross-species altruism on this scale among apex predators was virtually unheard of. Thabo's voice broke the silence, reverent and soft. In my language, there is a word, Ubuntu. It means I am because we are. Compassion connects all living beings. Today, I saw Ubuntu in a lion. Marcus nodded, deeply moved. He understood that the day's events were more than an extraordinary biological observation. They were a lesson in empathy and responsibility in the interconnectedness of life in the wild. Once the immediate drama had passed, the conservation team began their structured intervention. They prepared to transport the pups to the rehabilitation center, where surrogate mothers could integrate them into a viable pack. Marcus captured final footage, documenting the precise moments before human interaction. KBO's role in the pup's survival would now become part of the scientific record, validated by over 24 hours of continuous observation, infrared night footage, and multiple camera angles. Dr. Kimothy explained the protocol to Marcus and Thabo. We must tranquilize the lion carefully, remove the pups, and transfer them. The lion will recover fully in 4 to 6 hours. This is the only way to ensure the pup's survival while maintaining the integrity of the observation. Even as plans proceeded, KBO's behavior remained disciplined. He occasionally rose, ears pivoting toward distant sounds, and scanned the savannah, fully aware of the approaching humans and the distant wild dog pack. His vigilance remained intact, a final testament to his protective instincts. Marcus reflected on the astonishing complexity of the situation. KBO's actions were not impulsive or random. They were strategic, deliberate, and, in a sense, selfless. After preparations were complete, the team carefully executed the intervention. The pups were removed and placed into the protective custody of the park's rehabilitation program. KBO remained calm, standing at a measured distance, watching the procedure without interference. It was clear he understood, at some level, the outcome of his guardianship. The pups were safe, nourished, and once again part of their natural social unit. As the wild dog pups were loaded for transport, Marcus captured a final glance at KBO. The lion lay down in the afternoon sun, exhausted but peaceful. For the researchers, the magnitude of what had transpired began to settle in. In one day, they had witnessed predator and prey cooperating in ways previously thought impossible. The implications for wildlife biology, behavioral ecology, and conservation strategy were profound. Even more remarkable was the lesson in ethical and emotional intelligence, the recognition that survival was not solely about instinct or dominance, but also about protection, vigilance, and perhaps a capacity for empathy. Marcus realized that what they had documented could redefine understanding of cross-species relationships, offering insight into a dimension of the natural world rarely seen by human eyes. As the rehabilitation team departed with the pups, Thabo whispered, "They'll survive now because of him." The lion ensured it. Marcus, still staring at KBO, nodded. He understood fully. Science might take decades to catch up to what they had just observed, but the proof was there, undeniable, and immortalized in footage and memory alike. The reunion, the intervention, and the lion's behavior had created a ripple that would influence not only the survival of these pups, but potentially the broader understanding of animal behavior. Marcus felt a rare mix of scientific exhilaration and human wonder. KBO had acted in a way that transcended predator instincts, illustrating a principle that resonated far beyond the boundaries of the African savanna. Compassion, protection, and the bonds between living beings could emerge in the most unexpected places. After the pups were safely transported to the rehabilitation center, Marcus Jennings returned to his office at the University of California, Berkeley, yet the images of KBO, the lion who had defied instinct to protect vulnerable wild dog pups, remained vividly alive in his mind. Hours of footage, countless photographs, and meticulous field notes filled every available storage device. It was more than documentation. It was a record of a phenomenon that could challenge decades of conventional wisdom in wildlife biology and behavioral science. Marcus carefully reviewed the recordings, observing patterns of behavior, posture, and interaction that had seemed impossible in real time. Every nuance mattered. The protective circle KBO had maintained overnight, his strategic positioning near water sources, his precise responses to environmental stressors, and his measured restraint in the presence of potential threats like hyenas or even approaching humans. Each action suggested intention beyond mere instinct, and Marcus was acutely aware that such behaviors might be interpreted as interspecies empathy, a concept almost unheard of among apex predators. Thabo, now pursuing a PhD focused on interspecies interactions, sent him a photo from the rehabilitation center. The pups, already responding positively to surrogate mothers and pack members, were curled together, alive and alert, their small bodies resilient despite the trauma of isolation. Marcus felt a profound sense of relief. While the lion had provided temporary survival, human intervention ensured long-term continuity, bridging the gap between natural protection and sustained survival. The scientific questions were numerous and complex. Why had KBO, a male lion with every evolutionary reason to eliminate competition, chosen protection over predation? One hypothesis suggested misdirected paternal instinct. Perhaps KBO had recently lost his own cubs, triggering protective behaviors toward young animals, regardless of species. Another considered neurological anomalies or rare behavioral plasticity, a deviation from the rigid instincts usually observed in apex predators. Yet Marcus also pondered a less quantifiable possibility, a capacity for empathy in animals that humans had simply failed to recognize. He drafted the initial sections of the paper with a mix of rigor and wonder. The introduction contextualized the known predator-prey relationships between lions and wild dogs, emphasizing the high mortality rates among pups due to predation. Subsequent sections meticulously detailed the observation of KBO's behavior, reinforced with timestamps from infrared night vision footage, photographic evidence, and precise notes on every interaction. Marcus highlighted the unprecedented nature of the behavior. The active, deliberate protection of orphaned pups, or from immediate environmental threats and potential predators, coupled with behavioral adjustments to accommodate their developmental limitations. Peer review was anticipated to be rigorous. Marcus imagined the skepticism he would face, anthropomorphism accusations, insistence on instinctual explanations, and the demand for reproducible evidence. Yet he was confident. The footage was clear, continuous, and verifiable, capturing a real-time sequence over 24 hours. Furthermore, independent wildlife film experts had authenticated the video, confirming no manipulation. The scientific integrity of the observation was unimpeachable. Marcus reflected on the broader implications. Interspecies altruism among apex predators had rarely, if ever, been documented. KBO's behavior could reshape understanding of ecological relationships, challenging long-held assumptions about competition, dominance, and instinct. Could such instances of cross-species protection occur elsewhere in the wild unnoticed? Might there be a form of rudimentary empathy or social awareness in animals that humans had underestimated? The questions were vast, and the potential for discovery immense. Yet alongside scientific analysis, Marcus recognized a more profound lesson: the ethical and philosophical significance of what he had witnessed. Ubuntu, the interconnectedness of life, manifested not only in human communities, but also, astonishingly, in the behavior of an apex predator. KBO's actions demonstrated that compassion, in some form, could emerge outside human culture. Even in the savannah, a harsh and unforgiving landscape, acts of protection and care were possible across species boundaries. The Rehabilitation Center provided updates over the following weeks. The pups thrived under human and surrogate guidance, integrating with other wild dogs and learning hunting and social skills necessary for survival. Rangers monitoring the park noted that KBO continued to exhibit unusual tolerance for wild dogs entering his territory. He no longer approached aggressively, but maintained a measured distance, observing without interference. Even in overlapping ranges, the historical predator-prey conflict appeared muted. Marcus was fascinated. The lion's behavior had not been a one-time anomaly, but part of a persistent shift in interspecies dynamics. The academic community responded with cautious intrigue. Colleagues initially skeptical were forced to reassess their assumptions when presented with the comprehensive footage and corroborating documentation. Discussions arose not only about behavioral ecology, but also about the capacity for empathy and flexibility in animal behavior. KBO's case became a reference point, cited in discussions on adaptive strategies, interspecies cooperation, and the limits of instinctual dominance. Marcus remembered the quiet moments in the field, the exhaustion of the lion juxtaposed with the fragile trust of the pups. He recalled Thabo's words about Ubuntu, recognizing the truth in them. Interconnectedness and compassion could manifest in the most unexpected corners of the natural world. It was a reminder that while science sought to quantify behavior, some phenomena transcended measurement, residing instead in observation, interpretation, and acknowledgement of life's unpredictability. Months later, Marcus received a photograph from a park ranger capturing a tranquil morning scene. KBO, majestic under the golden light, observing from a distance as the now half-grown wild dog pups played alongside their pack near a waterhole. The pups moved with confidence, energetic and alert, displaying none of the fragility that had once made them vulnerable. The lion's watchful presence remained, respectful and non-threatening, a lingering testament to the extraordinary events that had unfolded months earlier. As Marcus finalized the paper for submission to Nature, he reflected on the dual nature of the observation. Rigorous scientific documentation paired with profound ethical and emotional resonance. The title, precise and encompassing, read, Interspecies Altruism Among Apex Predators, Documented Case of Temporary Adoption Behavior between African Lion, Panthera leo, and African Wild Dog Pups, Lycaon pictus. Every section emphasized the unprecedented nature of the interaction, the careful recording of behavior, and the potential implications for understanding both wildlife ecology and the capacity for interspecies empathy. Even with peer review and publication, some questions remained unanswerable. The why of KBO's behavior, whether instinct, anomaly, or empathy, remained speculative. Marcus accepted that not all phenomena in the natural world could be fully explained. Some mysteries, he realized, were better left as invitations to wonder rather than puzzles to solve. The savannah had revealed a glimpse of complexity that challenged both human understanding and the perceived limits of the animal kingdom. The story of KBO and the pups would live on, not only in academic journals, but also in the hearts and minds of those who followed the footage. It was a story of protection, courage, and connection, a reminder that the boundaries between species, like the boundaries of understanding, were more fluid than previously thought. Marcus reflected on the broader lesson. Empathy, vigilance, and care could arise where least expected, and even in the harshest environments, acts of protection could rewrite the rules of survival. As he closed the final draft, Marcus allowed himself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The observation had merged science and humanity in a rare, unforgettable way. KBO's actions had provided not just life to two fragile pups, but insight, inspiration, and a tangible example of Ubuntu, compassion manifesting where survival seemed to demand otherwise. And so, in the vast expanse of the African savanna, life continued. Predators roamed, prey thrived, and somewhere, under the golden light of the sun, a lion had shown that even nature's fiercest could embrace care over conflict, leaving a legacy that would echo in the scientific and human imagination for years to come.